is the senior archivist and a fine arts specialist at the Portman Archives in Atlanta, where she's worked since 2013 to manage visual materials and provide access to the work of architect and artist John C. Portman. With an MFA from the University of Pennsylvania and a background in painting, Paige brings both artistic and archival expertise to her role. Katie Twomey has served as an archivist at the Portman Archives since 2017, where she focuses on architectural drawings and leads outreach initiatives. She holds degrees in landscape architecture and historic preservation, and is particularly interested in the intersection of cultural landscapes and archival work. Rebecca Brown joined the Portman Archives in 2018, specializes in digital cataloging and paper media. With a background in English, anthropology, and archival studies, Becca brings over a decade of experience in archaeology and historic preservation to her archival work. Please join me in welcoming the Portman Archives team to the Georgia Archives.
Hello and welcome, and thank you for the lovely introduction. My name is, again, Rebecca Brown, and there's Paige and Katie. And again, we're going to have a 45-minute presentation here on our archives, who we are, what we do, and then we'll have a question and answer after that for about 15 minutes. And what I like to do, because I love the information and introduction here, is I like to explain a little bit about the archives. And the beginning here is I shape it in the 5 W's, the who, what, when, where, and why. And it might not be in the exact same order of, who, what, when, where, and why, but so I like to start with the where. And as you can see here in the bottom corner, we are located at 303 Peachtree Center Avenue in Atlanta, Georgia, in the heart of downtown Atlanta. And that building right there is called Truist Plaza Garden Offices. And it is actually a building built by Mr. Portman. And it is also in the middle of the Portman offices. It is also in the center of Peachtree Center, which is a bunch of buildings also built by Mr. Portman. So we are right in the middle of everything Portman. So that is where we're located. And another thing we like to talk about, why do we do what we do? Why do we exist? Another reason. So we have a mission statement that we follow. And I want to kind of read it off to you. And it is to appraise, collect, and document material of historic and legal value in order to preserve and protect architectural philosophy and the legacy of John C. Portman Jr. And then, we work to advocate and educate users about his legacy through preservation and accessibility. And that is why we exist. But, who the heck is John C. Portman Jr.? Some people might say. So he is an architect, yes, but let me tell you his bio. He was born in 1924. He passed away in 2017, and he's well known as an architect. He is an Atlanta native and served in the U.S. Navy, attended the U.S. Naval Academy during World War II, and through the GI Bill, he was able to go to Georgia Tech, graduated in 1950 with a degree in architecture. In 1953, he started his own architectural practice with a former professor named H. Griffith Edwards, because he knew that was the best way to make his own architectural practice. And that was called Edwards and Portman. In 1968, when Mr. Edwards retired, that became John Portman and Associates. And John Portman and Associates, the architecture firm, actually still practiced up until Mr. Portman's passing in 2017. Now, Mr. Portman, the architect, was known for his atrium hotels up there. The most famous one and his first atrium hotel was the one in downtown Atlanta called the Hyatt Regency Atlanta. It was built in 1967, It's 22 stories. And at that time, the only real popular hotels at the time were the drive-up motels, where you would drive your car up, go in, and that was your hotel room. And this new concept was new to everyone. Even Conrad Hilton said, "This concrete monster won't fly." And Mr. Portman said, "No, I'm going to try it." And the Pritzkers of the Hyatt Corporation took a chance, and it kind of became a big deal at this point. So that was the start of Mr. Portman's career. As an Atlanta native, some little known facts, he also became an Atlanta civic leader. And with this development of the Hyatt Regency and everything else, he saw the changes in the city of Atlanta and wanted to make sure that his city that he loved was going through the right changes, and championed a lot of political leaders and changes in that. So that is why we kind of note his Atlanta civic leader changes. And also a little known fact, and that Paige and Katie will kind of touch on, is that he is an artist and a patron of the arts. So we will also talk about that. But what I want to also point out here is that other major architectural themes we have here is urban development and architect as developer. So with the building of the Hyatt Regency and in Atlanta was the development of the Peachtree Center, and I'll talk a little bit more about that, is this the idea of developing Atlanta and the city and creating a little bit more fully developed Atlanta. And then also Emersonian philosophy. So that's what we're going to go a little bit more deep into. So I'm going to talk a little bit about urban development. This is Peachtree Center. The building of the Hyatt, was just one small part of 15 buildings here in downtown Atlanta. And this model, 15 buildings in 20 years, a time span of at least 20 years. And this was the start of revitalizing the downtown Atlanta area and making it more, commercially useful for the city. And that was his goal. And Mr. Portman even wanted to have housing here in Peachtree Center. Housing never happened, but maybe one day it will. And this was his idea for the city of Atlanta. And you can see this being replicated throughout other cities, which is actually pretty awesome. He duplicated this in San Francisco, Detroit, Shanghai, Kuala Lumpur, in Malaysia, and even Incheon, South Korea, to name a few other cities. And yes, urban development does have its pros and cons. And some of these cities didn't go forward or didn't complete urban development. Kind of like here in Atlanta, there is no housing, but we have these designs in our archives, which is very important to the history of these cities and the architect himself, because it tells the story and highlights what's going on at these different times in the cities and in the culture and how everything is discussed. So we're kind of showing what's happening, and I think that's actually pretty wonderful. And so let's go on to architect as developer. That was another concept that Mr. Portman actually started, and it wasn't really common in the 1960s. In the 1960s, most architects picked one job. That was either design or development. He didn't pick both. And he said, why not both? Because if he had full control over the land and the design, then he did not have to make any compromises on what he wanted to do. the separation of these projects meant, or when the projects were separated, that meant, you know, he could not do what he really wanted to do, but this way he could. And that meant interior design, yeah, checking here, financing, and even managing the building after it was built. And so on the left here, I have the Atlanta Merchandise Mart, which was the first building he built in Peachtree Center. See, I'm going to refer back to Peachtree Center a little bit because that's kind of here in Atlanta and also the most complete design that we have and also where we work. So the Atlanta Merchandise Mart was complete in 1961. This is 1961, and it's the first all-electric building, which meant even the boiler rooms were electric. At the time, most of them were gas, but he decided, no, I want it all electric. So this is now an electric building and the first downtown. So now he has full control over this building, and amazingly enough, because he had full control and he was the developer at the time, he stayed on as an owner or board member up until his passing in 2017. So that's 1961 until 2017 that he stayed on as an owner, which I find one of the most amazing things ever. And the use of this mart as architect and developer allowed for him to have that capital and that I want to say capital and backing to be able to do what he wanted to do for his other projects. And that kind of plays into his Emersonian philosophy, which you might think, how? But here's what I want to say. Now, this is not the inside of the Mart. This is actually the inside of the New York Marriott Marquis in Times Square. But compare the differences here. The outside, big concrete square, boring. Ugh. But in here, we have the atrium full of green, lush trees, hanging plants, a skylight, this nice glass elevator, everything like that. Backstory, Mr. Portman, when he was in school at Georgia Tech, he saw Frank Lloyd Wright speak. And he talked to Frank Lloyd Wright afterwards and said, Mr. Wright, what would you tell a young architect? You know, how do I become a great architect like you? And Frank Lloyd Wright said, young man, seek Emerson. It was kind of cryptic, but he said, okay. And so he started reading Ralph Waldo Emerson, and just all of a sudden it clicked for Mr. Portman. I'm going to follow that Emersonian philosophy, which really followed the ideas of nature and individuals, especially, so that bring nature into the buildings, because you have that deep, stark, boring concrete, but bring all that nature in, make it okay. And these buildings are for people. So how are you going to make these people feel more comfortable in these buildings? Bring that nature in. And so that's the individual and the nature. Other Emersonian points also are self-reliance, nonconformity, idealism, that kind of stuff. So it's combining these kind of two ideas. You need to have the architect as developer idea. I need to be able to be self-reliant in order to make this Emersonian philosophy happen. So it's kind of interesting how Mr. Portman came to these conclusions. And that's our basic roadmap to what is a Portman building. So I want to talk about some famous buildings. So here are the marts again. So I lumped them in together because there are 3 of them. So we have the Merchandise Mart on the left. So 1961, 1967. So I have this photo here that's 1967 because they built more on top after 1961. In the center is the Apparel Mart, which is the second building. And then on the right is the Gift Mart, which is the third. And that's also downtown and part of Peachtree Center. And then we have the Hyatt Regency Atlanta, which we discussed earlier, his first hotel, Atrium Hotel. And it was built for the marts because when people come in for those marts, they need a place to stay. So you've got a hotel. And then here is all of Peachtree Center. So these tall skyscraper buildings are part of that. They're office buildings. There's a mall in there. You've got some hotels, everything of sort. Because once you have your marts, your hotels, you need people that are working. You need a place for shopping. You need a place for staying and entertainment. And then Westin Peachtree Plaza, that cylindrical tower in the sky is also a Portman building. Again, more hotels. And in 1977, it was declared the world's tallest skyscraper. And in 1978, it was usurped by another Portman building, which I think is on our slide. Marriott Marquis was also another one of Mr. Portman, is also another part of Mr. Portman's buildings. It is also part of Peachtree Center. And I show this one because the interior is the really big atrium that you see in a lot of sci-fi movies, like the Hunger Games, the Marvel TV shows and movies. The list goes on. A lot of Atlanta filming now, they use Portman building interiors and exteriors to kind of show this space-like structure. SunTrust Plaza, which we now call Truist because the bank changed their name, that is also a Portman building, which was built in 1992 and was the tallest tower in the Atlanta skyline for a little bit. And then, wait, let me go back. And so that kind of encompasses Atlanta and the downtown area. There are a few in the suburbs too, but Mr. Portman focused mainly in urban areas. And I want to talk a little bit more about his other cities because, again, while he loved Atlanta and Atlanta is his home, he did do other cities. And here is Embarcadero Center in San Francisco. The fun thing is that a few of the Embarcadero buildings look just like the Peachtree Center buildings. So if you go over to San Francisco and Embarcadero, kind of looks like a Portman building. The LA Bonaventure in Los Angeles is also a Portman building. So if you go over there, kind of looks like Portman. Renaissance Center in Detroit, that is also a Portman building. And this is what usurped the Westin Peachtree Plaza. That tower in the center was, I think, about 2 or 3 stories taller than the Westin Peachtree Plaza. So he, beat the world's tallest building with the other world's tallest building. Very fun fact. The New York Marriott Marquis in New York City in Times Square. Another fun fact, this is 1985. It is the first high-rise hotel in Times Square. And this was at a time when Times Square was not a great place to be. So this is also another example of urban development. And actually, if I go back for a minute, Detroit, Michigan is also an urban development plan here as well. He worked with Henry Ford II to try and revitalize the Detroit area. And again, here, this is the beginning of Times Square becoming what you see now on TV with the big screens. You see here in this photo, there is a big LED screen. That was the first one there before Times Square turned into what it is now. And then another one that we like to point out, which is our favorite, I think, is Shanghai Center in Shanghai, China. This is in 1990. Development actually started in the 80s, or 1984. Mr. Portman went over to China or to Shanghai, and this is in the beginning when China started allowing foreign developers and architects over to start building in China. And this was one of the first high-rise buildings in Shanghai. So this stood in Shanghai as one of the tallest buildings then. And today, in today's photos, you know, other buildings tower over it, but at the time when Shanghai was starting its building up to what it is now, this was kind of the mark. And funny enough, it is the Portman Ritz-Carlton, and it is the only Ritz-Carlton with a name attached to it. So, how did all this history end up in archives? Archives first started out as microfilm. In the beginning, the architecture firm just had microfilm, which are these little 4x5 index cards. And when you scan them, you get that. Someone in the architecture firm said, we need to keep our drawings in copies. This was back in the 60s and 70s, and that's what they had. And we're really happy that they did that. And I want to say about the 2000s or so, the drawings were transferred over to the IT department at John Portman and Associates. And my colleagues will talk a little bit more about what happened to these drawings. But this is the start of a theoretical archives department. And then there was also a marketing department at John Portman and Associates. There, at the marketing department, they held the rights and information on image releases. And that was done for magazines, books, and even internal newsletters. So you have our little Portman portfolio, which is the Portman Company's portfolio, and that kind of thing. So you had two separate departments doing separate things. And people were sitting there going, you know, things are brewing, and how do we get everything kind of working together? So that's early 2000s. And so by mid to late 2000s, they decided we should combine. And that was the beginning of the archives department. So today we are here. There are three full-time archivists. We have an office and vault space, about 2,000 square feet. We also have offsite storage, so a lot more stuff offsite. And we also maintain the personal homes of Mr. Portman, which are in Atlanta and Sea Island, and they're called Enteleki 1 and 2. That's a little bit unique to us because his homes are part of the collection itself. And you can see here in the photos, that is our little office space. We have a little reception area for our researchers. We are open for appointments. And we have display cases showcasing his artwork. And I love numbers, so I want to break down a little bit of what we have because, you know, kind of like to brag a little bit. And also, you know, tell you what we have and what you guys can access if you ever want to come by. Oh, and we are also under the Portman Foundation, which is the nonprofit arm of the Portman companies. So we have 300 linear feet of processed material and 845 unique collections. What does that mean? So our collections are kind of categorized as buildings, events, projects. So any building that Mr. Portman created or thought of, we categorize as a collection. So the Hyatt Regency is a collection, Marriott Marquis is a collection, Peachtree Center is a collection, his art collection is a collection, that kind of thing. So 300 linear feet of processed material is what we have, which is a good amount, I think. But we do have a backlog. So I'm airing our dirty laundry, but it's okay. because we do know what's in there, and yes, we can find it. We actually just got 10 terabytes of digital files, which is a lot. We're going through it all, and it will be okay. We still have 188 bankers boxes of stuff, which that's 225 linear feet. So we've done 300 linear feet left, and we have 225 to go. So we're halfway there. That's what I'm saying. And in those bankers boxes are 233 more collections to go. So like quarter-ish. So that's not so bad. Another unique thing that we do and that Paige and Katie will talk about is architectural drawings initiative, which I mentioned earlier too. And that's what started everything, is digitizing all these drawings, because buildings are important to all of this. And that is, we have 41,118 digital architectural drawing records. That means we have a record for each drawing that we have scanned or has been scanned. That's a lot. But that is, every drawing that came out of that firm that is usually, and that's usually a final drawing that we have. So the most up-to-date drawing that we have is what it is. And that is, and so at the time, tubes weren't really, so like a, tube of drawings, that wasn't counted as well, but we estimate that's about 1,800 tubes. So that's a lot. But there's also a backlog of that, but we're getting there. We have about 400 tubes remaining. It's not so bad, I think. We have an estimated amount of, we estimate there's about 60 drawings per tube, which is 24,000 drawings to go, which, since we've already done 41, that's not too bad, I think. And so that is kind of by the numbers what we have. And again, we know what we have and where everything is. And so when people request, hey, do you have the drawings of the Marriott Marquis? We can say, yes, we do, or we know where it is, and we can retrieve it and find it for everyone. So how do we do all this? And for that, I am going to pass it on to my colleagues who will explain it a whole lot better than me. So Paige and Kate, on to you. Yes.
Thank you so much, Becca, for sharing the intro about the who, what, why, when, and where the Portman Archives started. And I would like to share a little bit more about the architectural drawing initiative that we do here in our archives. To the left, you can see our in-house storage for our remaining backlog for the drawings. The drawing initiative was started in the early 2000s, and like Becca mentioned, it was under our IT department. Originally, these plans were stored at an offsite facility. We would order the tubes into the office, scan them on site, and send them back out to storage. Sadly, we no longer have the resources to continue on with the offsite storage. So we worked this year to clear out the storage space and bring everything on site. Our in-house digitization, we have an in-house scanner that you see on the left, and it's the Context HD Ultra Scanner. And we work to feed the drawings through, and then they're scanned at a TIFF. And then that's what becomes our digital file catalog. In addition to those physical online original drawings, the drawings are copied onto microfiche in the 60s. As Becca noted, the archives house these items in our storage today, and our game plan is, once all the physical drawings are scanned, these tiny microfiche will be cross-checked to make sure that we don't have any gaps in our records. during the clear out of storage, you can imagine we found more than just the drawings that we were expecting to see there. We noticed that there were extra microfiche, and these microfiche are not in the best shape, so they'll be the priority when we get around to digitizing these guys.
Question.
Yes.
So going back to the beginning, when they made the microfilm, they still kept the paper for the most
They
part.
did.
So as
They
far as
did.
you know, you have a complete collection of both the microfilm and the paper.
Not necessarily. Sometimes the paper would get lost.
Yeah, so the microfiche was meant to be kind of like a just in case. So in addition to working physically with the drawings, we also work with the photographic. Oh, I do want to talk about these drawings before I move on to all the photographic media. These drawings were a special set that we recently found of Mr. Portman's home in Teleki 1. These are original blueprint drawings, which are very rare. So it was a real treat to find these. Once we found these, we knew that they were special. And so this year we'll be working towards preserving them in a way that we can use them for educational resources. We don't know which route we're going to take yet, but we're thinking possibly encapsulating them so people could handle them, or reproducing them so people could also handle them that way too. But we're really excited about this, so we wanted to share. Okay, so next I want to talk about our archival collections. Like Becca mentioned, these materials came heavily from the marketing efforts that were going on from the 60s moving forward. We have a range of materials, anything you can think of that would document the architectural practice up until 2017. So photography, publications, marketing material, models, presentation plans, even audio-visual materials, interviews. You think we've got it probably. I came on into the archives in 2013, and the archive had been going about 10 years prior. So it was a shift from really pivoting away from the marketing practice, being the stewards of these materials. So we began to do a lot of the image requests, all the research requests started coming to archives. We also do on-site digitization with these materials. We use an Epson flatbed scanner, an overhead copy stand that has a camera that connects to our computers, and we use the general office scanner. When we think about processing our materials, when the archive started, we worked at the item level, which you can imagine was very tedious and time consuming with all of the photographic media. So as the archive has evolved, we've managed to figure out a way to do a hybrid of item level and more process, more product, less process. I will always fluster over that acronym. It helps us to group similar records together so that we can group them in our cataloging system, and just allows for more efficient practice. Our collections management system is called Archive Era, and we're really enjoying it. This is an example of how once a small collection is processed, how it looks to us on our end, and we're able to generate reports through the system to share with our researchers. Okay, so here's the fun part. I think the fun part for me is our artwork collections. Mr. Portman was a champion of public art. He was also an artist himself, and he collected artwork of several of the artists that he championed and used in his projects. So I'm going to go into a little bit of depth about each of these topics. As a supporter of public art, Mr. Portman included artworks from his very first project that was called the Fraternal Order of the Eagles in downtown Atlanta. This was a project he worked on straight out of college, and it incorporated a sculpture of an eagle that you see on the exterior of the facade in the far left photo. The building still stands, but sadly the sculpture is no longer there. In the center, you see the atrium of the Hyatt Regency Atlanta, and his first monumental size commission was by an artist named Richard Lippold that was commissioned to do this piece, Flora Raris, for the center of the atrium. Luckily, this piece is still featured in the Hyatt Regency today. So if you have a chance, it's open to the public and you're able to go see it in person. Another really special artwork that was produced was for the atrium of the Westin Peachtree Plaza. It was a piece called El Gran Muro by artist Olga de Amaral. She originally was commissioned in 1975, and there were 16 panels that were produced to be featured on the central column of the atrium. And this is a really fun way to connect to Mr. Portman's philosophies on Emerson, of bringing nature inside the space, bringing materials like fiber and fabric to soften the concrete interiors. These weavings were taken down from the space in the 90s. We don't know exactly when, but they were in storage for several years. And at one point, they came into the custody of the archives when they were found in a storage space. So the archives, between 2018 and 2020, acquired 7 of these panels. We were unable to maintain storage for these guys too, because they were so large. They were 10 by 14 feet each. We've since redistributed them into several institutions, such as the High Museum of Art and Smithsonian, along with Lisson Gallery, who represents the artist. Because these institutions were able to take on these pieces of artwork, the story lives on, and 2 of the pieces we know have been restored and are currently on view in Miami. There are many projects in cities outside of Atlanta that also included public art, and here are several of them. From the top left to going clockwise, you've got Embarcadero Center West in San Francisco, Detroit Renaissance Center in Detroit, Michigan, Marina Square in Singapore, the Portman Hotel in San Francisco, and again, Marina Square in Singapore. One really special piece is the central sculpture in the Portman Hotel. Mr. Portman liked that piece so much, he had it commissioned to be featured in his beach home in Sea Island. So, as I mentioned several times, Mr. Portman was an artist himself. These are a few pieces that are favorites of us in the archives. He was a painter. He began as a painter. In the 1980s, he went to Europe with his daughter, Jana, and they were there studying art history. They viewed so many artworks abroad that she encouraged Mr. Portman to explore painting, and he did just that. He began by exploring oil on canvas and later used acrylic on canvas, and then began working in sculpture in the 1990s. And it really goes to show you that you can start as an artist anytime in your career. Over the years, the archive has cared for his artworks along with maquettes and sculptural works by Mr. Portman. Several of the pieces require ongoing conservation work due to an acid bloom reaction that happens with the early paintings that Mr. Portman did. There's a chemical reaction that goes on with that early paint. Mr. Portman also turned several of his smaller sculptures into large-scale public arts that are on view in Atlanta today. To the left, you have Mr. Portman's bell sculpture, who's on view at the 230 Peachtree Building and Peachtree Center, and Koan, Portman's final sculpture that's on view in the central campus of Georgia Tech, where everything started. Mr. Portman's collected works further demonstrate his patronage to the arts. He collected numerous works, not only from the artists he commissioned, but also of those he befriended. Some of the pieces here are by an artist named Edigio Constantini, and he became a good friend of Mr. Portman, and they supported each other throughout the years. Next, I want to talk about the Portman residences. At the top, you can see an elevation of Entelechy 1, and at the bottom, you have an elevation of Entelechy 2, Portman's beach house. Entelechy 1 is an 11,000 square foot home designed by Mr. Portman and is constructed in 1964 in Atlanta. It's comprised of dominant geometry of circles and squares and reflects a strong sense of order within this design. There are 24 circular support columns that give structure to the two-story dwelling. It's strategically aligned to open up into the interior space. And the columns are used for a variety of purposes, such as circular stairwells, powder rooms, closets, interior, libraries, and they also provide vertical and horizontal circulation. The entrance is at the upper level, and the gathering areas, the living room and the music room, extend beyond both levels of the home. Nature is integrated into the interior design with the extensive use of trees, plants, and water on the main level. There's even a pool that runs through the interior. Next is Entelechy 2, Portman's beach house. Entelechy 2 is a private beach residence on Sea Island, Georgia. It was completed in 1986. It's formed according to its own functional and environmental needs that result in the form and space reflecting the island and the sea. There are vine-covered walls that surround the site, 18 exploded hollow columns similar to the Atlanta residence. They support a large rectangular sunscreen that's symbolic of a classic beach umbrella. Beneath the screen are 4 enclosed living pavilions that comprise the house, a 2-story entry wing, a cylindrical glass living and dining pavilion, a single-level master suite that is suspended above the interior court terrace, and the lanai. The pool and the sculptures border the house. Main concepts of Entelechy 1 are, as you can guess, nature, home as a museum, and the umbrella. The key elements of the home include reflecting pools, fountains, entry scoops, and a grid-like structure with hanging plants and artwork. It generates a space that serves as both home and a museum that features his artwork collections. I'm going to hand it off to Katie. She's got a lot to share as well.
So our engagement and outreach initiative is still relatively new to us. We, back in 2021, we had a new take on what we were going to do. And so we actually modified our mission statement. Becca mentioned earlier our mission statement in the presentation. I really want to focus on that final line. The archive works to advocate and educate users about Mr. Portman's legacy through ongoing preservation and accessibility. The archive Paige shared with you the vast array of materials our archive is fortunate to have, and our goal is to offer the wealth of art and architectural materials to educate and expand opportunities for learning and growth in Atlanta and around the world. Advocating and educating as a corporate archive under a not-for-profit umbrella takes many shapes. For us, we look at our outreach and engagement as two distinct categories, internal versus external. We have 5 sister companies. These companies are part of the Portman brand and range from a real estate development firm to a building management corporation to a financial division. Each company has their own needs of the archive. Some examples of assistance that we've done in the past for companies can be answering questions like, how many atrium hotels did Mr. Portman build? Or how many hotels or buildings feature a spiral staircase that Portman is known for? We also can provide statistics about the number of buildings Mr. Portman built in his lifetime versus those that were just only designed but not actually realized. We also have the privilege of providing in-house tours for our employees and our guests. They're typically architectural or art-based. In fact, we just gave one yesterday, and it's truly a privilege that we work right within the heart of Mr. Portman's buildings. And so we're able to take people in to actually experience the awe and amazingness of places like the Marriott Marquis or the Atlanta Regency Hyatt. We also provide historical drawings for use in the company's current projects. They're useful for pulling out architectural details like exploited columns or scoops. And we also keep track of all the in-office artwork that includes Mr. Portman's pieces. We want to make sure that each piece is in good condition and is being rotated so that no one piece stays in direct sunlight for a prolonged time. We also note if any paintings, sculptures, or Portman designed furniture needs to be removed and repaired by a conservation service. We've had unique requests in the past from our sister companies that involve, hey, this person's retiring. They've been here for 40 plus years. Can you find us pictures from all their years here? We also had questions, can you give us the drawing file so that we can put a picture of one of Mr. Portman's sculptures on the back of a t-shirt that we'll wear at a company picnic. So they're really fun to request, and they never get stale because there's always something new. Our external outreach is still a blossoming endeavor that every year we are fortunate to be a part of new outreach opportunities, just like this one. In the early years of the Portman Archives' existence, we offered some tours and provided assistance for researchers who had questions for their academic papers or publications. Years later, in addition to reference questions and tours, we have been able to explore more avenues to work with our local Atlanta community with programs like the Georgia Archive Institute to host interns, to working with local professors who teach about Mr. Portman's art and architecture, to hosting local textile students so we can share a hands-on experience with some of Mr. Portman's collected artworks from famous textile artists like Sheila Hicks and Olga de Amaral. This year, we've been very fortunate to work with 2 local universities to assist them in exhibitions about Mr. Portman. The first has been Agnes Scott. In 2024, Professor Catherine Smith reached out to our archive to ask if we'd be interested in providing imagery, historical information, and context behind the construction of the Dana Fine Arts Building, which is located on their campus. The building is home to their art and theater classes and majors. It was designed by Edwards and Portman and completed in 1965. The building was unlike others at its time. Mr. Portman purposely made sure to create a building that not only embraced the existing Gothic architecture that was on the campus, but that it also provided enough light, air, and space so that it was functional for arts and design-based classes. This exhibition looks at how the college can build upon the existing patterns of Dana Fine Arts Building while also taking an in-depth look at how their building fit into Mr. Portman's personal architectural career and design philosophies. For more information, please feel free to scan that QR code up in the corner, and I'll take you to the Building on Dana website. Our second exhibition we worked on this year is the Defining Skylines exhibition located on Georgia Tech's campus at Price Gilbert Library. The University Archivist, Alex McGee, reached out to our archive also in 2024 and asked if we would be interested and willing to assist in creating an exhibition that highlights Mr. Portman's architectural evolution and career in Atlanta, while also highlighting his strong connection to Georgia Tech, which is where he received his architectural bachelor's. Our archive, of course, was happy to provide assistance, and we provided images of Mr. Portman, images of his buildings, artwork, and furniture designs, along with lending over 20 different artifacts, including furniture pieces that were designed by Mr. Portman himself. Again, the QR code up in the left-hand corner, you can scan and find out more information how you can visit the exhibition. In fact, it will be open till the end of the year, so they are open on the weekends. And then one other thing is one initiative we've been working on that has been a labor of love is in creating a virtual recreation of Mr. Portman's private residences in Telekey 1 and in Telekey 2. We worked with a company called Immersa to use Matterport scans to recreate each home, including details like specific artworks, vegetation location, and being able to explain how guests would interact with the sites. This is just a small snippet of the VR video to give you an idea of what we created. For us, this initiative was twofold. One, the Portman family was interested and felt it was important for them to have the ability to virtually visit and walk through each residence that Mr. Portman so carefully designed for his family and furnished. Number two, it provides the archives a hands-on tool that we can share with professors and students as a teaching example to further examine Mr. Portman's design philosophies while getting to explore the space like they were there. It's a great look at taking a two-dimensional architectural drawing and being able to see it in a three-dimensional form in real life. We do have a website, of course, and you are welcome to visit it. It provides examples of Mr. Portman's projects, his personal artworks, and his published books. We also have certain pages that are devoted to what movies were filmed where in which buildings, in case you're interested. And we do list our research policies. I want to thank each of you for joining us during this Lunch and Learn time. Becca, Paige, and myself have been so honored to be here to speak on behalf of the Portman Archives. We hope that we've been able to provide some insight into what our collections contain and the history of the archive. We want to open the floor shortly for any questions or comments. And should you think of questions later, we invite you to visit our website, portmanarchives.com, where you can click on the contact button to shoot us a question or ask for research assistance. Thank you so much.
Okay. This one, thank you, Becca, Paige, and Katie. This was wonderful. Okay. He was a developer, he was an architect, it seemed like he was a philanthropist. It seemed to me that did his family come from affluence?
No, that's actually a really fabulous question. No, so in fact, the story goes he met his wife while he was one of the ushers at the Roxy Theater, which is located or was located in downtown Atlanta, formerly on the site where he built the Westin Hotel, actually. And so his family was just your average middle-class family. His father worked for the government. In fact, he was the sixth child and the only boy of his family. And so, no, they came from a very, just normal background.
That's an incredible story.
Yeah, he had a lot of drive to accomplish what he did. And I think it took a lot of gumption and just, not taking no for an answer. So that was a great question. Keep going, yeah, I love it.
Why does everybody want to? Okay, you probably all have your favorite building that he's made. Can you share with us what those would be?
So I'll get on the microphone. So actually, my favorite building is the Hyatt Regency Atlanta. I think the stories behind the Hyatt are kind of the best. It's actually the first integrated hotel in Atlanta, which is actually amazing. When he built it, he said, this is no place for hate. So he said that no segregation here. And also the stories that we've heard are just kind of hilarious because we have them in our archives too. So another thing that happened was when it was being built, when it opened, people lined up around the corner just to go in and ride the elevators up and down because it was a new thing. The elevators were glass, and he patented that because he wanted people to have an adventure going up into the atrium. And he showed his daughter, Jana, who incidentally is part of the foundation. And, we interact with her from time to time. And she was a little girl at the time. And he said, like, look at all these people lining up. And then as a little girl, she said, but where do they go? And then he heard that. And then he came into work the next day and told his structural engineer, I want a restaurant on top and it's going to rotate. And so that's how the Polaris is on top of that building and why it's rotating now. And also that atrium, when you walk in, they call it the Jesus Christ moment. They want people to go in and go, Jesus Christ. So when we do our tours, we say, this is what people do. And also when we walk into the Marriott, also you go, oh, because that is the feeling that you get when you go into some of these kind of grand buildings is the gasp. And it's fun to see that in even just that first building at the Hyatt Regency. So, yeah.
I too like the Hyatt Regency, but just so that we can do something different, I'm going to pick the Marriott Marquis. And yes, you should go inside and visit it. It's stunning to see the height of it and go up to the 10th floor and get to look out in the city. But the other reason I like it is because it has the pseudonym of being the most pregnant building in Atlanta, which I find hysterically funny. And it makes sense when you see an elevation side view of it. So I always think that's a great thing.
I also love all of the buildings in Peachtree Center, the Hyatt, the Marriott, the Westin. But I think for me, the Beach House Residence is my favorite building. I think because it's so personal to Mr. Portman and his philosophy, his family. And there are just so many elements echoed from all of his work that show up in the Beach House. That I think it really culminates his vision as both an architect and an artist. And he just was able to have fun there and create a space for him and his family to enjoy.
Thank you.
What would be one of the elements, just a small element that really stands out for you in the beach house?
The water features that flow throughout the house. And one thing I think of when I think of his Emersonian philosophies about nature and bringing all of these elements in, is experiencing all of these different sensory experiences. So the water brings in movement, it brings in sound, it reflects light. So I think for me, that is one of the features that just kind of encompasses it all. Well, the pool is also very nice. Yes.
How many buildings are there in Atlanta? And are there ever any tours open to the public to, like you tour historical homes and gardens?
Great question.
Yeah, sure. So let's see, for the number of buildings, we're talking at least 10. I could be off on that, so I'll double check it. In terms of public tours, usually we do give tours to universities or items like that, but I'm giving you guys the download here. In October, the Atlanta Design Festival hosts tours of homes, just like you said, and IntelliKey One is going to be on that this year. And there's going to be like roughly 3 tour sessions with maybe 12 people each. So You may want to get a ticket when they first come. But, please feel free to reach out to us. We've also given tours to, just people who are passionate about John Portman. So reach out to us on our website and we're happy to assist. Madam, yes.
Yes, the building with the rotation, had Mr. Portman do any other buildings?
Yes.
With the rotation, because that is one of my favorite, and when we have visitors, that's where we take.
That's a good building. So great question. So in Atlanta, he did both of his rotating buildings. There's the Polaris at the Hyatt, which is the UFO blue shape. Fabulous. Go to it. Don't work for them, but they open at 5 on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. You should go. The other building is actually the Westin, also here on Peachtree Street. And the restaurant formerly rotated. Sadly, it no longer does. But the views of the skylines, it's even taller than the Hyatt, are stunning, especially when it's, at the end of the day and you can watch the sunset. So highly recommend both of those.
I think the Westin Bonaventure, it also the top rotates, and I believe Embarcadero.
Embarcadero Center's Hyatt Regency.
Yeah. The Hyatt and Embarcadero, and also I think the Detroit.
And the Detroit one, I believe still rotates.
And the Detroit one still rotates as well. Yeah, so he started, once he got it down at the Hyatt, he replicated that at multiple hotels after that. So, yeah. Detroit, LA, maybe New York. Is there one in New York?
I think there's a restaurant in the hotel, but I'm not sure if
I don't know if it rotates on that one. But yeah, I know LA, San Francisco, Detroit, maybe Chicago. I think it's a Chicago one.
Either way,
Yes.
there's many cities out there that when you visit, look up Portman buildings and you could potentially
Yes.
find a revolving restaurant. Are there any more questions? Yeah, what is it?
I love the idea of bringing nature into buildings. My wife has a lot of plants in our home.
Yes.
A lot of people do this now. I used to work in agriculture, and I know when you bring plants in the homes, you bring pests. So was this an issue for Portman?
Yes.
So yes and no. Basically, bringing in plants did such an amazing job of softening and making these spaces more warm and relatable for people. But it also meant more maintenance. And so specifically in our building, they actually hired a plant guy. He's been with us for at least 30 years. And every day his job is to go water all the plants the whole day in the building. It's truly stunning. But that is one thing. We haven't dealt necessarily with pests in the office buildings just because they have a pretty good pest control.
Okay.
But I would say, in a lot of the hotels, they've done away with having real plants. It's kind of a maintenance nightmare, but they put in fake plants that hang, which kind of gives the same general illusion. But like at maybe some of his private residences, especially in Sea Island where it's hot and humid, sometimes, that can be an issue, but it's nothing that's been, anything big.